just want to welcome John Higgins, or Biggles, and give him a round of applause. We've already heard about some of his films. So we've heard about some of the films you've worked on, but it's an incredible list of big-name cinematographers like Seamus McGarvey on The Hours and the upcoming Narnia film, Roger Deakins on 1917, Skyfall, Darius Khondji on Mickey 17. The list could go on, but to get to that point, I'm just interested to know how it all began and what actually made you want to work within the lighting department in the film industry.
Well, I come from an electrical trained background, and I came to England in 1973, and I worked my way. I went to night classes and I got better qualified. And I ended up working for a big oil company on the rigs in the North Sea. So I did that for 3 years. And I had some time off being paid by the oil company. And I saw a little ad in an evening newspaper, technicians wanted for film studio, must have electrical knowledge. And I thought, well, this might keep me occupied during the day. And that was the Samuelson group, and I got the job, and Shell paid me for 6 months and then asked me to come back to the oil rig, which I declined, and I stayed doing the film business. So I liked what I was doing.
And then how did you learn on the job there, and who were your biggest influences early on?
Yeah, it was on the job. I started off doing very small projects, and fairly quickly I was lucky enough. I did 2 big films just on the floor as a technician, and that was the Muppet film, A Great Muppet Caper, and then we did another film after that called The Dark Crystal. So, and then the rest, I started getting hired to gaffer small dramas and stuff like that, and that just went from there. The first big film I was asked to do on 35mm was 1984, which Roger Deakins shot. He asked me to do it, and from then on, it just seemed to, one job led to another. Yeah. Quite stress-free, really.
Yeah, and you worked on quite a lot of music videos early on as well. What did that teach you that you then brought onto feature films?
Well, the thing about doing music videos is that no two were the same, in that they used all sorts of technology that maybe I might never have seen had I not done those things. And they were quite chaotic and anarchic at times, but you couldn't but learn. It was impossible not to learn with some of the people. But it was very enjoyable most of the time.
Yeah. And you've enjoyed a lot of different collaborations with different DPs. I just wondered, how do you like to work with a DP and create that bond?
Well, the DPs are all different. They have different, some are quite dictatorial. They just give you a sketch and tell you what they want. Others are more collaborative, and my preference is to work with a collaborative DP. But if they want to micromanage, that's fine. I don't have any ego problems with that either.
Yeah. And you enjoyed a long collaboration with Roger Deakins, and you mentioned how that first came about. So why was that so successful, would you say, and how did you work together with him?
Yeah, I mean, I knew what he didn't like and what he liked. I did about 20 films with him over 40 years. So, and some of them, we started off doing small stuff, relatively small. After 1984, that was very well received, and he got offers to do slightly bigger ones, and they got bigger and bigger. We did Stormy Monday, which was all in Newcastle, and that was technically interesting to do as well, a lot of night work. And so we fixed lights to the bridges, 5Ks and 10Ks, and we put chains and padlocks on them, but there the revelers found out how to take them apart, throw them down on the street below. So it was funny.
And what about working with your lighting crew? Because I know some of them are here, and I know you work with quite a lot of female crew members as well. What are your views on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good move in the industry that female technicians are not. It's not a surprising thing to see now. The first people that I noticed that were employing female operatives was the scenic painters. And then I saw a couple in the camera department, and now they're in every department. It's great. It doesn't hurt at all. It's a very good move. Some of them are fantastic technicians.
And how would you describe your kind of environment in your crew, and what kind of vibe do you like to create?
I like it fairly relaxed if we can keep it that way. Not too stressful. It can be, but we try and avoid too many stressful moments. Keep it good humoured.
And how would you describe your lighting philosophy as well? Do you think a lot of it is instinct as well as technical knowledge? Or?
Well, the technical knowledge is essential, but it becomes instinctive after a while. You know what's wrong. If you look at a set that's been lit or someone else has been shooting on, you can see sometimes the layering errors or omissions. But yeah, it's very instinctive and reactive, and some cinematographers, it's very easy to prepare a job for them. It's when I go to work with as a cinematographer on a very big movie that I haven't worked with before, it takes a few days to bed in, and we find out their way of working and fall in line with that as best we can.
And in terms of overcoming some obstacles of like budget and time, what advice would you give gaffers to help realise the director and cinematographer's vision working around those obstacles?
Well, the misnomer that some people have is that when you get a $300 million film, the budget's no problem. I can tell you from experience, they are as tightly managed as a little low-budget film. And I did, for instance, the last big film I did, the lighting estimate came in at nearly $15 million. It's a lot of lights, you think, but very, very big sets. And we had to have a few rethinks, and we spoke to the assistant director who was doing the scheduling and found ways around altering the schedule a little bit, that we didn't have to commit to so many lights for such a long period. But that's the budget you have to be aware of, whether it's very small or very big film. There's going to be people watching that and watching it very, very closely.
And moving on to the innovation side of things, I was just wondering, what are the key changes you've seen throughout your career?
Well, everyone notices the LED systems that are out there now, and they are a game changer, there's no doubt. The film industry that make filters, they must hate the LEDs, because any changes or any new look that we had to put on lighting with colors, color correction, whatever, was always done with gels. There's a great range of gels out there now, but with color mixing and color science, you can deliver any color or series of colors. For instance, when we did 1984, that film was quite a complicated film, and the process system used a bleach bypass process that the colors react, primary colors can react very strangely, like a bright red can become a sort of a washed out pink and stuff like that. So we had to watch our color, and we had the swatches, but they didn't have the range of colors that are available now in gel form. So we were trying to match. Roger would do is cut the available colors together to try and make the color we needed.
Yeah.
But we can do that electronically now in a few moments. But the thing with mixing two gels, if they're both fairly dark colors, they don't like the heat, so we had to keep changing them. So the costs were phenomenal for filters, and that's a thing of the past now. But the principle of lighting doesn't change. The principle of getting the exposure correct and all that, that doesn't matter what the light source is. That has to be right. The only thing, if you use a different light source, like infrared or something like that, that's a tough one to measure, and we have to sometimes we do use that, but not a lot. But that is something that you have to test, because the exposure meters won't read it accurately.
And when did you start working with NANLUX fixtures? What project was that on?
I think the first time I used NANLUX was on one of their little promotional films that I did with Rodney Charters, who's a friend of mine. Yeah. And I hadn't seen the 5. I knew the 5000 was coming, but the biggest light we had was a 2400B. The B on the end denotes bicolor. And I was quite blown away with it, how powerful. The thing we couldn't get at the start, they've been around for a while, LEDs with good color engines in them and good color matching and stuff like that, but there was no hard lights. There was no Fresnel lamps available at all. And an American company brought out some very small ones that were quite good, but they were too small, like a 300 watt tungsten lamp. But the first time I saw a useful Fresnel lamp was the NANLUX 2400B. And but when I saw the 5000, I knew it was a game changer, because I saw it I think it was at the BSC show a few years ago or something, one of those shows, and I had not seen anything like it. And the fact that they had that we could spot and flood the lens from the control desk. It was a DMX control on the actual spot and flood, was fantastic. And I started using them. They weren't available to us for Mickey 17, but after that we used them.
I think we're actually, no, carry on, sorry.
Sorry, I think they were on the market, but no UK company had any. We couldn't source them in this country, but there are plenty of them around now.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to watch a clip of that project you just talked about with Rodney. So if we could just play the first clip, please.
Hi, my name is Rodney Charters, ASC. We wanted to shoot a short film testing out the whole range of LED lights from NANLUX and showing how they can be used in a variety of different situations on high-end or even feature film production. And it's important, as your role as a cinematographer, to ask the actor, you feel this light here, if you could give me a little bit more of an angle, it'll catch you better. We actually put up an 8x8 Grifflon outside, and we punched the 2400B into it. Dad comes in. That's the soft wash across there, and catches him as he comes inside the door with pavo lights, and making you feel there are other windows in the property. From the left is a pavo slim, and also from the right is a pavo slim. The practicals are all under our control. And there's a tube up above the window just to help. I think I'd like a little bit of a double net action. Nicely shadowed.
Yeah, I've got that in.
Yeah. That's at 10, Biggles? Maybe we should warm it up. What's it at right now? These practicals play a significant amount, and then there's a little bit of natural daylight coming in here as fill. We brought lights inside and changed them a little bit for the close-ups, but this was our master look. And what's that at now, Biggles?
15% there.
All right, you could go to maybe down to 10.
We bought in a little helper for her. You tend to give a little bit more light on a close-up because you can bring the lamps in closer to the edge of the frame. I'm a super believer in color contrast. If you go about with your eyes open, in reality you see coolness and warmth and other hues all the time. And when everything is on CRMX control and you have an iPad running blackout, it's very easy to say, please take it down 5 points, bring it up, change the hue and the saturation, and that's how you work now. We used to run around with the meter and gels.
Take it down then. Go to 80. It's important that the actors are in a scene which is natural and not artificial, and they adapt to that and they feel motivated by it.
And you also work with two of the 5,000 Bs and the 2,400 Bs on the upcoming film Bear.
Bear.
Lorna Tucker's.
Yeah, it's Bear is from it's a film based on her book Bear, and we shot a lot of it day and split days, day and night work in Soho, different parts of the West End. And Westminster Council do not like generators, and we had a very limited budget, and also there wasn't the time to negotiate permits to bring generators in. They didn't have the money to rent them, so we did it with two 5,000s and two 2,400s for big night exteriors, big day exteriors. They were our main workhorses. And we had some of the big battery banks, which I didn't have enough people to work with them because they require overnight charging. You can't charge them in rooms because there are explosive hazards and fire hazards and everything. So the location department took over the management of those for us. So as they would drop down in charge, we would give them back to the location department and get a new one in. And we couldn't have made this film using hot lights, the tungsten lamps or HMIs. We just didn't have the facilities to power them. So that entire film was shot with LED fixtures, everything. We didn't have any tungsten or HMI fixtures at all. And it was very successful, it looks good. And so as working in inner cities gets harder and harder every year, the possibility of having to have an alternative type of power supply, some of the battery systems that are out there now are pretty fantastic. And some of them have can support a 10 kilowatt load, but not for very long. But the LEDs allow you to have a very powerful source with a bit more life in the shooting day. So it's a benefit to having the LEDs that when you have a limited power, that you can still make things light.
Yeah. And moving from one of your more recent productions to one of your first, 1984, which, like you said, was your first 35mm film, and Roger Deakins as well.
Yeah.
We're just going to play a trailer for that so you can get an idea of the visual language if you haven't seen the film.
Sex, 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 cry, 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 cry.
Whether we are preparing this is constant victory, constant triumph. You begin to accept it, you still not in it, and finally become part of it.
In 1949, George Orwell had a vision of the future. Today, that vision is still a best-selling novel, and his prophecy remains as terrifying as ever.
If you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot standing on a human face.
A future where freedom becomes slavery,
Okay.
where privacy is forbidden, a past forgotten, and where living people simply vanish. Yet one man and one woman dare to love.
Can you get something out of me, Mutter?
Yes,
Take this.
everyone knows. Being that you're not one-on-one is the worst thing in the world.
You can't get inside. You can't get to your heart.
John Hurt, Susanna Hamilton, Cyril Cusack, and Richard Burton in the crowning role of his career.
What are your true feelings towards Big Brother? Hate. You must love him. It's not enough to obey. You must love him.
The film of the book of the year. George Orwell's 1984.
So so you mentioned the desaturated look and the bleach bypass
Yeah,
technique.
bleach bypass.
Just wonder if there's anything you wanted to add about how you worked with Michael Radford, the director, Roger Deakins, in the prep process to create that bleak look.
We had a production designer was a guy called Alan Cameron, a very distinguished production designer, and he facilitated us with a long way in advance. We had a few months prep on it, and he gave us the posters that he was going to have on display throughout, and also the colors of the walls, the uniforms, everything. We had all that, and we shot tests on them, and to see physically how the process with the negative affected those colors, and then we found a way of correcting them that made them more saturated or richer, or they have found a way to make it look better. But we had to be very careful with a process like that. It could be corrected because it wasn't on the neg, but it was on the neg. We were stuck with it, but it just added another complication to it. But it did work. But the difference now with digital cinematography and LED lighting control, there's two new grades that are very important that have come onto the floor to work with the cinematographer, and that's a desk operator we have a data technician with him usually, and a digital imaging technician who they manage the color of the lights and all that. So that was two grades that didn't exist when I started first, but they're essential to everything we do now, and they watch for color shifts and things like that, or if something happens to one of the fixtures, they can see it in their tent. But it's another degree of responsibility for people.
And the sequence we saw opening that trailer was the rallies, and I know that was shot at Alexandra Palace at night with thousands of extras. So how did you light that?
There was a couple of thousand extras. Yeah, we lit that with tungsten lights, the Dino lights. The man who owned the rental company is here today as well. GBS lighting we had, I don't know where they got them all from. We had dozens of them, and dozens of generators. It was a very, very big thing. We didn't have crowd replacement like we can do it now. So if there was, I think the most people we had was on one night at Alexandra Palace, where was around 3,000 extras. So it was a huge task, and it was coming into the summer, so the nights were not as long. So the pressure was on to get it finished before the light came up in the morning. So it was an interesting time.
And then how did you contrast that, so, which we saw them in there, the scenes where John Hurt's character is rewriting history? How did you like that? 'Cause that's a more kind of oppressive, stark environment.
Yeah, it's just a harsher look to it, but I can't honestly remember exactly what we did, but it worked.
And what about the scenes where he's getting tortured by
That was on that was with the rats. Yeah,
Yes.
that was a horrific scene. That was on a stage at Pinewood, I think, and it was just a single light source, I think, in the room, and it wasn't complicated,
Yeah.
but it was all done in camera.
And then in contrast, the Golden Country scenes that we saw.
Yeah, that was in Wiltshire,
And that's natural.
yeah, that's natural. It's a beautiful rolling landscape. The construction department built the tunnel in the hills, and then the door flies open. You got the rolling Wiltshire countryside outside. That was shot on a Sunday, and I remember for 8 weeks, 56 days, we did 7-day weeks. So it was punishing because we used to shoot 6 days a week, scheduled. Then the 7th day we would do recce's for the upcoming work. So everyone was pretty tired by the end of it. But it was a great film. And it was the book that I studied in my English classes in college. And it was amazing to see it in the flesh.
And do you have any hints or tips for working with natural light, like in the Golden Country scenes?
I think, yeah, if it's massive changes, you need to be able to control the light, especially when you come in for close-ups and things. So what we use a lot now are Manitous with big diffusion frames or blackouts on them that we can bring in for tighter stuff. When we did 1917, that takes place over 1 day. So what we did on that, we couldn't alter the lighting on the big wide vistas, but we always had weather cover to go to, and we didn't have to call it that often. We're quite lucky that the weather was fairly benign, and we knew there was bad days coming up, and we were down in Salisbury Plain for some of it. And they rented sheds off farmers and things and built smaller sets on there, which we had lit and prepared. So if the weather suddenly took a turn for the worse, then we would go indoors and shoot on the weather cover sets.
Yeah. And you mentioned the new roles that are on set now since 1984. Is there anything you would, or how would you have lit 1984 now? Are there any other changes you would have made?
Well, we'd probably have used big LED units, and we wouldn't require the massive amount of generation and diesel. But I don't know if we'd use electronic cameras. There's still a lot of stuff shot on film. You'd be surprised. And I think 4 out of the six films that were up for an Oscar last year were shot on film.
Yep.
So film, contrary to some popular belief, is not dead. Still alive and kicking.
And then you just mentioned 1917, so we're going to move on to that later, but we're going to now take a look at Children of Men that you work with Alfonso Cuarón and Emmanuel Lubezki, or Chivo.
Chivo, yeah.
Again, it was quite a desaturated and documentary feel to that. So if we could just play the clip of Children of Men, please.
I can't really remember when I last had any home, and I certainly can't remember when anyone else did either. Because really, since women stopped being able to have babies, what's left to hope for?
The world was started today by the death of Diego Ricardo, the youngest person on the planet. The youngest person on Earth was 18 years, 4 months, 20 days, 16 hours, and 8 minutes old.
The ultimate mission, why are women infertile? Some say it's genetic experiments, pollution. Why do you think we can't make babies anymore?
Doesn't matter. It's all over in 50 years. It's too late.
Theo. Have it been? I'm sorry about theatrics. Things have been a pain lately.
I haven't seen it for 20 years.
I need your help. Not for me, a girl. I need to get on the coast, past security checkpoints. It's hard for me to look at you. You had your eyes.
So why did you come to me?
I trust you. Show me.
Larry knows it's me.
You have to read the book.
What is this book?
The Human Project of Centre Boat.
The Human Project.
It's the greatest minds in the world working for a new society.
Your baby is the miracle the whole world's been waiting for. We will find a way to get into the Human Project, I promise.
We're almost there, kid. We're almost there.
And what was your prep process like with Emmanuel Lubezki to create that gritty feel? Because I know he likes working with natural sources.
Yeah, we had a fairly extensive prep time. For instance, the farmhouse that they escaped from, Chivo said, could we work something out to light it all with sodium vapor lamps? So the sodium vapor are the yellow lights that you see used on night exteriors. There's less and less of them now because they're being replaced by LED, but they have a very deep yellow look to them. And so we set tests up and showed that it was all shot on film. We shot some tests with stand-ins and things, and lit entirely with sodium. And they had a screening for Quaron, and he liked the look. So everything around that farm was lit with sodium. And the problem with sodium is you have to be very careful because it's not flicker free. You have to really watch it that we had them at the right frequency all the time. But and it was a hard job physically because there was an awful lot of lights and matching the exteriors. There's a bit where there's a shootout and they go through a bus and into the building. That was on 3 different locations and on the stage. So then they go into the stage where the stairs is up to where the baby is. And that was 4 different sets, and to match them and everything, it was a challenge, but we had the time.
And how were you working with cues and during this film, and the desk operator? Were you working with them?
Yeah, we had
closely?
we had desk operators. I can't remember what desk we were using on that, but I did a film of a musical, and I discovered we used to have problems with the desks in that they would either lock up or they would crash completely. So we had a guy that did the show side of the film, and we had a match to it. And he brought in a desk called a Grand MA2, I think it was. Now the MA3 is out. But this was a game changer because it didn't run on Windows. It ran on Linux or Linux. And it was the most stable thing I'd ever seen. And we never had problems because we were using a couple of hundred moving lights, and all the film lights were all controlled, and there was lots of cues and stuff. So the 2 desks worked side by side with a separate operator on each, one of them a theatrical operator and my desk operator. And ever since that, I've insisted it has to be a Grand MA because it takes so much stress and worry out of it. There was all sorts of desks coming on the market, and they all had inherent problems. And the one that we almost used on that film, I did a commercial with it, and it didn't do what it said on the tin, as it were. And we had endless problems on this commercial, but it was very fortunate that we'd done it, because it proved the point. So we had to, the rental company went out and bought 3 or 4 of these very expensive German desks, but they certainly paid their way. We had no problems whatsoever.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And then, because Children of Men is known for long takes, and one in particular that's famous is the scene in the car and the shootout. So just wondering, how did that approach affect your lighting strategy when in confined spaces as well?
We used all passive lighting on that. It was daylight, and we just controlled the density of it and the diffusion of it. But a lot of that, most of that film was shot handheld, and with a 40-kilogram camera with a 1,000-foot load on it. The camera operator, George Richmond, he tried everything to get the weight of the camera down, but at the end of the day, you have to move with the 40 kilograms with the full load, and it was superhuman. They had a full-time massage person on the production, because sometimes after doing a very long take, maybe 5 or 6 times, he started to get cramp, and he had to get it. It was very tough for the camera operator.
Yeah, were there any other lessons that production taught you? Because it's one of the most technically challenging, I guess.
No, it's just to get the sets, as soon as the construction is finished on them, get the sets lit as far in advance that we had time to go in and have a look at it and shoot tests on it. And in the Michael Caine character, in his house, he's growing marijuana. And so I think they're called hydroponic lights. And Chiba said, I wonder what it's like, what it'll look like if we can get hydroponic lights, and it'll be in the background, it'll be a different color. So we put the hydroponic lights in, and everyone liked the look. And it was surprising how many people came to me and said, what's going to happen to these lights at the end of the job? I said, I have no idea. Do you think they'll be selling them? I said, yeah, let's talk to the art department about that. But yeah, a lot of people were interested in buying some of them.
Yeah.
I don't know what for, but...
And so that film, as you mentioned, you worked with quite a lot of practical lights. So I just wonder if there are any words of wisdom you can share about working with practical light sources.
Well, the thing is, the practical lights, because of we can digital camera at 800 ASA, practical lights become a light source now. They're not just background. They are the real deal, and they are used as a lighting tool all the time. So it's become a department on its own within a department. So the practical lights, and again, we have to test them to make sure. If you buy industrial LED fixtures that look fine to the eye, but what we normally do with them is convert them to film standards, which have a different driver in them, that we know the frequency we're driving them at, and we can control them with that. We did have some problems on one show that I was doing, it was a television show, in that our department bought all these lights, and we weren't using an RE camera, and we had problems with strobing, a lot of problems, and they embraced it in the end. So, well, but it was a period film in the 1940s. So if you look at it, I won't say what it was, but you can see the lamps pulsing, and that's because they're LED and or industrial quality rather than made for cinematography.
Yeah. And so each production brings with it different challenges and technical approaches. So this was obviously lots of long takes, and it was meant to be kind of unfolding in real time.
Well, that was always, we always knew that.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. I mean, to maintain the look all the way through, it had to remain handheld. And
Yeah.
George did a great job in doing that, but it was at the end of some days he was absolutely really in pain, you know, in his shoulders and back.
Yeah. And then similarly, 1917 was also a lot of
Yes,
long, continuous
well, that was a
takes.
Grips film. I
So-
mean, the Grips, I've never seen Grips work as hard. It was, and there was every sort of camera management system from Technocranes, the Trinity, Steadicam, and it's a combination of choice of camera manipulation to suit the event. And sometimes they had to change midstream and say, no, this isn't working, we'll have to do it differently. But mostly it was all choreographed in advance. And if we turned up in the morning in the trenches somewhere and it was a bright sunny morning, it wouldn't match what we shot the day before. But Sam Mendes would rehearse all day, so everyone knew their task. And then a bit of cloud comes over and they go and they get it in 2 or 3 takes because it was honed so finely that it had to work.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but we'll just play a trailer that will show some of the sequences we're going to talk about.
I have a brother in the second battalion. Yes, sir. They're booking me on track. The orders are to deliver a message calling off tomorrow morning's attack. If you fail, it will be a massive. We've got orders across here. That's the German front line. If we're not clever about this, no one will get to your button. Hold on. That was the one that makes sense. Last man standing.
As you mentioned, you work with natural light a lot for the exterior daytime scenes, but what did LED allow you to do for other sequences?
Well, LED didn't play a big part in that film because the only things we lit was night interiors, night exteriors, and stuff like that. And the big night exterior that you see with the burning church at the end of the film we had 4,000 bulbs, individual bulbs, individually controlled and programmed for that scene. And we were like weeks and weeks preparing that. The big vista shot you see with the soldiers running through the trenches and through the fields, we couldn't light it.
No.
But what we did have was Manitous with 20 by 20, what the Americans call fly spots. They're big. And when we got to a piece of tunnel that we could control the natural light, we'd use them there. But most of the stuff we did involving lighting were the night exteriors and night interiors.
Yeah.
That light you see with the church, it's 4,000 kilowatts of light. It's an enormous amount of light. And that was at Shepperton Studios on a back lot. I think we were about 8 or 10 weeks rigging it, because every lamp that would take those bulbs in the UK, the lighting rental company sourced them for us. And so we had to wire them that we controlled every single bulb, because it wouldn't look like fire if there was big shifts. If we were doing 6 bulbs in one, it just didn't work. The more sources you have control of, the better it looks. We didn't attempt to gel the lamps to get that warm fire glow. What we did was overpower the bulbs. We had 4 million watts available to us, but we only run it between 20 and 30%. So it brought more red into the lights, and it looked very, very good color. Measured with a flame, it was the same color temperature. But we had to have sufficient power at those lamps that if they went on at 100%, nothing would blow, because they're all controlled from one dimming console, which is a multi-channel, the Grande May desk. And if the lights had gone on and we didn't have sufficient power, we could lose a night shoot and have to repair a lot of stuff. So we had to have the potential there to have everything on full, which we never required. We knew we didn't require it. But if by some fluke someone pushed the wrong button and everything came on 100%, we had to have it designed that it wouldn't blow anything. And it never happened, but I wouldn't like to risk it, because that's the time it will have.
So that individual control allowed you to create that more random effect.
Yeah,
That's a natural
yeah, and it's more like
fire
a flame. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is the most challenging part of a night shoot overall when lighting?
Well, the night shoot is, to any gaffer or DP, is a big worry, because you can have so many changes, but you're relying on generated power. And if one of those machines goes wrong, and I've had it happen on a couple of films where they've literally destroyed themselves. You know, it's a massive mechanical failure. And when I did a film called Chaplin, and we were in Smithfield Market with 600 extras, dozens of horses, and we had everything on. And the assistant director said to the cinematographer, Sven Nyquist, which was a great pleasure for me to work with him. He was such a fantastic guy. He said, "How long?" I said, "Probably 15 minutes." And with that, a 250 kilowatt Rolls Royce generator exploded, literally exploded. And at 10 o'clock at night, we still hadn't got a replacement in. And I had to go up and say to the producers and Sir Richard Attenborough, "This isn't going to work tonight, guys." And Attenborough said, "Well, it's good rehearsal. We'll do it again in a couple of weeks." And so we came back in a couple of weeks. Instead of having 4 generators, we had 8 in groups of 2s, and the ability to change over within 15 minutes if one of them went down. And of course, it didn't the second time, but it's a lesson. If it can go wrong, it will eventually.
Yeah.
And that's the terrible worry of night shoot or a weather change. If you start shooting at night and then it pours down, you're going to lose the work unless you have somewhere else to go.
Yeah. And moving from the huge rig that you created for the burning church, I just want to hear about the torches you created for the two soldiers to carry, because it's still very complex. But what was the testing around that?
Well, the two soldiers had these torches, and there were copies of what they were issued with at the time. So the light that they gave out was a tiny flash lamp bulb. It was useless. So we found an LED which we could deliver strong enough power, strong enough light from it. So we had 6 torches made for the two soldiers. So we always had one that they used for the rehearsals, one each. We had 2 spares, and we didn't use rechargeable batteries because they're a trap as well. And everything, the amount of electronics in them was unbelievable, and the practical department we spoke about earlier, they made them, and they worked fantastically well. We couldn't put diffusion because it had a hemispherical bulb diffuser thing on the front. So you can't get diffusion that would fit round a hemisphere. So we got them shot blasted. So if anything went wrong, we had 2 spares and 2 more. But it was and it was all radio linked back to the dimmer desk. So the soldiers could do anything they wanted. They could put it down, pick it up. It had to be independent. You couldn't wire up their sleeve or anything because it restricts them. So we researched the batteries. We found these batteries that would deliver the power for an hour without any, it didn't degenerate in any way. So coming up near the hour, then we changed them over and replaced the batteries for the next time. So we never left anything to chance. But I don't know what they cost, but they must have been thousands and thousands. But they worked. I don't know where they are now, but they were little pieces of jewellery nearly. Yeah.
So that control was vital, and also the testing is a...
You can't ask an actor to do their lines and do everything and have to operate a switch. We always would put remote control on them that my guys could switch them on and switch them off. If there was a cue for them to go on, we would still do that. We'd never ask an actor to switch on a light.
Yeah. So what is your testing process like with different DPs? Do you just always try and aim for a certain amount of time you spend during testing, or does it differ?
I will test anything that I have a doubt about. About how long it's going to run, the color quality, if it's something we haven't used before. I think you can't test when you have the actors on the set. That would be very remiss.
Yeah.
So put it through any processes that you have to go through, including in-shot light changes or light level changes or anything, because if you don't do that, you're setting a trap for yourself. And they'll all look at you. We got 4 big actors costing thousands of pounds an hour, and you can't light them.
Yeah.
So don't leave anything to chance.
And I'd also like to find out about Erin Moore's bunker scene, Colin Firth's character, the general he plays, because you created, again, individually controllable sources for the oil lamps. How did you create
the oil
that
lamps, but concealed behind the oil lamps, they're called an FEP bulb. They're a long tungsten bulb, a 1,000-watt bulb. And when you take them down to 20% or 25%, they give a lovely quality of light. And if we wanted them diffused, we would use the practical department's shot blaster and just blast the glass, and you'd have a nice diffusion on it. So they were all there and concealed behind it. We could drill holes in the desk or wherever it was, so you didn't see a cable running across the desk, because it's cheaper to do it that way than remove it in post-production.
And is it correct you were flagging the bulb, so when whatever way the camera was pointing, you would have to adjust?
Yeah, we would dress something in front of them, or you know, each presents its own little challenge at the time, but with cooperation from the props and art department, they would help us to disguise them.
And we're just going to look at a very different project, Gravity, which was a groundbreaking film in terms of visual effects, lighting, cinematography. So we will just look at that now, and an early version of virtual production as well, one of the very early versions.
Beautiful, don't you think? What? Sunlight. Terrific.
And again, you worked with Chivo, Manuel Lebetsky on this, and you had all sorts. You were dealing with moving actors, cameras, lights. So if you could just run through the light box that was created, because it really did break ground.
Well, that was what you see there, that outer space sequence outside the capsule. That was the first time we'd used a volume to. So the volume that we used was came from rock and roll. I don't think we had the Unreal Engine to drive it then. I could be wrong, but it was, in comparison to what we got here, it was a very crude device. The pitch of the LEDs was 9mm, and that means the measurement from the center to center on the LEDs. So it was a fairly crude screen. These ones are probably 1.5 mil or 1.3 mil or something, so they're a lot more high quality. But what people forget is that to shoot in a volume, you have to have the media to go on these screens before the event. So if everyone isn't on board with it, then there's going to be a conflict very quickly. And I went to the effects house with Chivo one day, and I'd never seen anything like it. They were writing the code for all these things, and they wrote in that we change position of the sun, you know, for a different scene, a different time they could put the sun in different places. But there must have been 200 or 300 people sitting at workstations, like the old 30s films with the typing pool, with dozens of people. And it was an amazing achievement. And so there's a slight change to the script or something. They may have to rewrite the whole code for that scene, that the sun is in a different place or something like that. And so Chivo was on that project for probably 6 or 7 months before we shot a test. So it was an amazing undertaking, and there was learning for everyone in it. You know, we discovered that to make some of the changes wouldn't happen as quick as anticipated. So I remember we got wrapped. It was in Shepperton Studios at 6 o'clock one evening, and the programmers worked all through the night, and it was ready the next morning at 8 o'clock, and this was in the testing phase. So they realized that there has to be something that could be done quicker. So with the camera moves and things like that. So they went back to old-fashioned methods of putting the camera on a crane. We had we sometimes used motion control techniques but it's when that didn't work, in that something changed with the actor's position or something like that, and it was sometimes better to revert to older technology. So it was a mix of old and new, but it was a very, very interesting and a great way to learn.
Yeah. And how was it working with, because Chivo's known for liking working with natural light and very authentic, but this is also obviously working with artificial environment. How did
Everything
you
is
create
artificial.
that natural look still?
Well, we had to find a volume first. There was no places like this around, and so we found a rock and roll company that had the highest definition stuff that we could find, and they brought in. We tested it, and it was a learning process, really, what worked and what didn't. And but once it was working, it was very little changes to light or anything. All it was quite boring. After a while, the challenge was all in the pre-production and stuff like that. But so not a lot to change.
Yeah.
Once we got
And you've
going.
worked on other virtual production projects since. How has it changed, would you say? How would you approach this now?
Again, you need the media to go on the screens, and that has to be there as long before you require it as possible, because it doesn't always go as smoothly as people expect. Sometimes you get color issues or something with the plates. The plates are the projections that are on the volumes, and so you need it. Post-production is very small in comparison to pre-production. The pre-production is the big time now when you're using volumes. So it's getting people on board with that you have to have everything ready before you bring the actors in.
And for anyone, any gaffers here that may be moving on to their first virtual production, how would you say the role differs of a gaffer? And is there more training needed in that area, would you say?
Well, you have to know your color science. That is essential, and how you correct stuff, how you match. And there's a lot of better meters available now. The best way to match color is using the XY system. To those familiar with a lighting gamut, you have an XY reference, and if you point your color spectrometer at a particular color, the meter will tell you exactly where on that gamut you set your lights. There's two indices, and it will match it perfectly every time. The reason I say you need to be able to match the color, the overall color of the screen, is that sometimes you won't get enough light from the volume. It's got a lot better now, but sometimes you have to enhance the volume with LED panels, and in order for that to work, you have to match it exactly, and it's easy to do now with using XY. And you can't trust the human eye. I'm sorry to say, the human eye is very easily fooled. If you're working on a green screen and you step into a room that's lit with daylight, the windows will all appear pink. It fools your eye. There's a lot of magenta when you walk out of the green area. It's very, very, it's disconcerting, but it's interesting that the eye is completely fooled.
I'm conscious that I want to allow people to ask questions as well, so I just wondered if you could just share some advice for anyone that might be moving into the position of a gaffer, and maybe something you wish you'd been taught early on, or something that they should learn first.
Well, I think you can't unlearn things. I always say this, because you might learn something, and in years forward, going forward, it'll come back to you someday on a set, and it might be the answer that you're looking for. It's when I was starting out, I used to have to go to bookshops that sold very expensive books because they didn't sell many of these books annually. Some of them were more than a week's wages on lenses, camera movements, and all the things that we're required to know. But now everyone's got a computer in their pocket. YouTube has got dozens, if not hundreds, of lectures from cinematographers, colorists, all that. I would say if you want to familiarize yourself with any aspect of cinematography or lighting science, it's all available to you on your computer. And if you're on the set and you see the cinematographer or gaffer doing something odd with a light, I always ask them, and they'll explain what the purpose of this modification or whatever it is. Choose your moment, and not when, and you could ask the next day or whatever. And I find, or have found, that when I ask a question, I'll always get a good answer, the correct answer, and people are willing to help you, you know. But I would say you learn as much as you can. You'll need your electrical theory on loading, how to watch your consumption, that you don't put too much demand on one outlet or something. But as well as that, you should know your color science.
Do you think apprenticeships is a good route to
Yeah,
go down as well?
I was an apprentice for 5 years. Then I went to night school and learned more. Apprenticeships now are very short in comparison to what they used to be, so they don't give it the range. I mean, I was at least 3 months, sometimes 6 months of a year in college, paid for by the employer, who was the Irish government. So they didn't care. They made sure you went to your classes and passed your exams and everything. But take every opportunity you can to learn about your craft. It'll always be to your advantage when you understand why you're doing things. But it's up to the individual to stay on top of that.
Yeah.
And new technology, if you go to the BSC show, most of these shows are free. You just have to register. You get an entrance ticket. Go talk to the people on the stands, the people who are go to the NANLUX stand. They'll have their lights there. They'll put it through its bases. Go to any of the manufacturers and satisfy yourself that the lights will do what they're telling you. And some of them will say, if you're starting another film soon, you want a couple of our lights, we'll give them to you to try them out. And they're very good like that. So any opportunity you get to advance your knowledge, take it.
Okay. Thanks so much. I think that's all we have time for, but I think John will be sticking around for a bit if you have any other questions, because there's going to be food and drinks at the back. But I just want to say thank you very much to Biggles, and thank you to everyone for coming.
Thank you.